You just did something your brain does 100 times a day, and you had no idea what actually happened. Because the second you pulled that memory out, the second you looked at it, your brain didn't play it back. It rewrote it. Not approximately. Not a little chemically, neurologically, permanently. And here's what that means for every single thing you think you know about yourself and your past. It's going to take about 10 minutes. And I genuinely don't know how to make this not unsettling, so I'm not going to try. In the year 2000, Karim Nader, Elizabeth Loftus, and a philosopher named Derek Parfit, they were all pointing at the same thing. And by the end of this video, so will you. I want you to meet Marcus. Marcus is 34. He lives outside Columbus. And like almost every person I know, he carries one specific memory that he's basically built his entire sense of self around. When he was 12, his dad took him to his first Cleveland Browns game, November. Cold enough to feel it in your back teeth. His dad bought him a hot chocolate. They sat in the upper deck. The Browns lost, obviously. But Marcus will tell you, without a single hesitation, that it was the best day of his childhood. He can see the orange seats. He can smell the stadium. He can feel the weight of his dad's arm across his shoulders. Marcus has told that story probably 200 times. At Thanksgiving, to his daughter, once to a therapist, when his dad passed and he was trying to explain what grief actually felt like. But here's what Marcus doesn't know. And here's what almost nobody tells you. Every single time Marcus told that story, he wasn't remembering it. He was rebuilding it from scratch. And every rebuild changed the original. By now, what Marcus calls the best day of his childhood might be almost entirely a story he wrote about himself. And I need you to understand, that is not a metaphor. That is electrochemistry. For most of the 20th century, scientists believed memory worked like a filing cabinet. You experience something, it gets encoded, stored, filed. When you need it, you pull the file. The file doesn't change. That was the entire model. Then Karim Nader ran his experiment. He trained rats to fear a specific sound, classic conditioning. Fear the tone. Simple. Then he triggered the memory of that fear. And while the memory was being actively retrieved, he injected a drug that blocked protein synthesis. A chemical that said, you cannot write anything new right now. The rats forgot. Surgically. Specifically. They forgot only the thing they had just remembered. Because here's what was actually happening inside those neurons and inside yours every single day. When you remember something, your brain doesn't press play on a recording. It reconstructs the event from fragments scattered across different regions. Context from the hippocampus. Emotion from the amygdala. Sensory detail from the cortex. And it assembles them every single time into something that feels seamlessly whole. During that assembly window, the memory is not just available. It is editable. It can absorb your current mood. It can be reshaped by something someone said to you about that event last year. By the version of you doing the remembering, the grieving 17-year-old or the 34-year-old coaching soccer. When it gets filed back in, the changes go with it, every single time. Now, Elizabeth Loftus took this even further. And what she found is the part that I genuinely did not sleep well after learning. Loftus spent decades demonstrating that you can implant entirely fabricated memories in people's minds. Not vague impressions, not hazy feelings. Vivid, detailed, emotionally rich memories with nothing more than suggestion. In one study, participants were given a fake childhood photograph of themselves inside a hot air balloon. They had never been in a hot air balloon. Within a week, they were describing the flight, the view from above, how nervous they had felt. Whether it was morning or afternoon, they were not lying. They were not confused. Their brains had constructed the memory, assembled fragments, and built something entirely new, filed it as real, handed it back with full emotional conviction. So here is the uncomfortable question that raises the narrative you carry about your own childhood, about why you are the way you are, about that thing that happened when you were 16 or 22, the version you've told and retold and refined until it feels like the truth. How many times has it been retrieved? How many different versions of you have held it, added something, and quietly put it back? This could feel like a horror story. The first time I sat with all of this, honestly, it did feel that way to me. But I want to show you why I don't think it is anymore. Because there is something else buried inside the science, something nobody mentions. Zoom out for a second. There's a philosopher named Derek Parfit who spent most of his career asking one question. Is there a continuous, stable self that persists through time? Or are you like a river, the same name on the map, but entirely different water? Memory reconsolidation basically handed him the neuroscience he never had. You are not a fixed thing with an archived past that you access on demand. You are a process. You are the story that a brain is telling itself, updated constantly, revised in real time, built new every morning. And here's what that actually means. Not philosophically, practically, for the next 10 years of your life. If memory is reconstructive, if every retrieval is also a rewrite, then the meaning you have assigned to your past is not set in stone. It never was. Every single time you pulled a memory out and looked at it, the meaning was in play. And what you call processing something is not just reflection. It is the biological mechanism working exactly as designed. You are not merely thinking about the past differently. You are filing it back differently. The pain was real, the events happened, but the interpretation, the story of what it means, has been rewritten hundreds of times already. By versions of you who were scared or grieving or 22 years old. Marcus will tell his daughter that Brown's game story tonight. And he will tell it as a story about what it means to be a father. The memory that gets filed back in tonight will be slightly different from the one he pulled out this morning. He doesn't know that, but maybe now you do. 100 years from now, no version of that memory will exist anywhere in the universe. But right now, it is being lived and relived and remade. William James Harvard, late 1800s, wrote that the greatest discovery of his generation was that a human being could alter their life by altering the inner attitude of their mind. Your memories are not your prison. They are your rough draft. Here's what you actually just learned. Memory is not storage. It is reconstruction. Every retrieval is a rewrite. Think about the 5 or 6 stories you tell yourself most often. Imagine knowing the meaning inside those stories is not sealed. But here's the question I could not stop turning over. Why do some people seem to get completely stuck? Why does telling the same painful story over and over sometimes make it more entrenched, not less? It turns out the answer has everything to do with how your brain physically changes its own structure. I'm going deep on that in the next video. Hit subscribe so it's waiting for you when it drops.